This week we'll have some fun in the snow when I go to Norway to get a Golf GTI back on the road.
Absolutely, that's fantastic.
But there's a slight problem with the engine. I can't help noticing one tiny detail. You've actually removed the I from the GTI.
Yeah.
To restore an old car back to its former glory can easily become a bit of a nightmare, and of course that means that dream car is going to end up in a garage collecting dust and never ever getting completed. In Edd China's Garage Revival, we're going to be visiting people who've got stuck on a project for whatever reason, and the plan is to try and revitalise, reinvigorate them to get that car back where it should be, on the road. Today I'm in a rather wintry Norway on my way to see a young car enthusiast called Stian Jørgensen. Now he sent me a distress video about his 1983 Mk1 Golf GTI.
Hi Ed, I need some help with my Golf. Det jo bare dritt dette greiene her.
Apparently after 2 years of hard work the project has rather ground to a halt on account of a problem with the engine.
So Ed, please come to Trøgstad and help me out with the Golf.
23-year-old Norwegian bricklayer Stian Jørgensen lives together with his wife Tonja and 2-year-old daughter Sybil in rural Trogstad, just east of Norway's capital, Oslo. If you drive through these parts, be sure to stop and enjoy one of this region's absolute gastronomic highlights, the hot dog in a waffle. Yeah, really. Interestingly, should you find yourself completely smitten by Trogstad's hinterlandish charm and want to stay for a few days, please be advised, there are no hotels. However, the local prison might be able to fix you up. Trogstad's biggest employer has 90 beds available for your disposal. For me, all that will have to wait. I have a car project to revive.
When it comes to alterations, rules and regulations tend to vary between countries. So I've actually made an appointment to see a local golf expert to give me some insight as to how I might better get Stian's project back on track and hopefully find a way through. And I think I'll do that before I go and see Stian.
2 years after the successful launch of the first Golf in 1974, Volkswagen decided, although a bit reluctantly at first, to also introduce a souped-up version, the Golf GTI. With a fuel-injected 1.6-litre engine capable of 180 km per hour, the GTI was the first high-performance hatchback to hit the market. The result was a sensation. Volkswagen only planned to make 5,000 GTIs, but by the end of the original run, they had made 420,000.
Super, André. Et maintenant, qui sera le premier au sommet?
Hi, are you Jan Tor? Hi, I'm Ed. How are you doing?
Nice to meet you. Jan Tore Kopperud heter jeg. Jeg produktansvarlig for Golf i Norge. Har startet en klubb også, som har vært for Volkswagen Audi-eiere. Så jeg en ekte Volkswagen Audi-entusiast, og kanskje mest med hovedpunkt på Golf da.
Well, I noticed you're in front of a beautiful, beautiful Mk1 Golf.
Yeah, this is actually the oldest Mk1 Golf, which is restored and on the road in Norway.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow,
So
that is really rather lovely.
78, so it's quite old.
That's very special. And obviously there's a slightly newer one over there. So is that why we're here, what this display is all about?
Yes, it's actually a kickoff for all the representatives in Norway working for Volkswagen.
As a Golf expert, obviously we have this chap, Stian, who has his nice little 1983 Golf. Now Stian wants to do a little bit something special with his car. He wants to try and shoehorn in a 16-valve engine into that sort of 8-valve engine space. And
yes.
I understand that the authorities aren't that keen in this country of actually allowing that extra bit of performance, but there is perhaps a way around it. I mean, do you have a solution for me?
Well, it's not a quick way to do it.
Okay.
It's quite pity because you don't have the papers from the factory to implant that engine, so you have to go around it, and it could be possible to upgrade the car in the same way as for example, a Scirocco 16-valve, which has this 16-valve engine as standard. Måten å bygge opp bilen som en tilsvarende modell med den motoren. Og da snakker vi om en Scirocco 216V, for den basert på samme konstruksjonen, samme plattformen som Golf 1 GTI, med da de oppgraderingene som Scirocco 216V har.
Has it been done before at all?
It has been done before with some few cars in Norway, but
Okay, so there is some hope. That's good.
it's a hope. Yes, it's a hope, but not every car has been legally registered with that engine.
Okay.
Also, so that's
tricky.
important to mention. Jeg kjenner til I hvert fall 2-3 biler som blitt godkjent, og så vet jeg om en håndfull til som konvertert, men ikke godkjent.
Yes, well, fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your help.
Yes.
Brilliant. Good luck with the show.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Wow, now this is quite exciting. So it seems we do have a possible solution. It's not as easy as I was hoping, and there's a bit more paperwork and stuff, but there is a way. Can't wait to tell Stian. Well, this looks like it might be the place. So this is the right place. Hi.
Hi, Ed.
Are you Stian?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Good to meet you,
Nice
sir.
to meet you too.
Thanks for your video. I realise you've got a few problems. I think I've got some answers, but it'd be brilliant actually to see the car.
Ja, plutselig så sto Ed på døra. Da ble jeg rimelig sjokkert.
Fantastic. Is it in here, I guess?
Yeah.
Warm garage in this snowy climate?
Of course. Ja, når Ed kom, så da tenkte jeg at nå det bare å gi gass, for nå må den bilen bli ferdig.
After you. Oh, look at that. Oh, she's lovely.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So, is that the original paint?
Yeah.
That is amazing. How long have you been working on this project?
Maybe 2 years.
2 years. That's pretty good going then. Okay, and this looks like this is the 8-valve engine that you've actually taken out of the car.
Yes.
Fantastic. And I guess that one over there would be the 16-valve engine you want to put back in.
Oh, yes.
So now the thing with this, obviously, you've got a bit of an issue. I think I have a solution, which is great, but we might as well have a look at the rest of the car. I mean, so she's actually in really good nick, and you've obviously been working on stuff as you've been going. You've got the grille is all back in place. Obviously, you've done the brakes and stuff. What about wheels? Actually, the wheels look a little sorry.
Yeah.
So have you got the original wheels?
I get the snowflakes.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. So they need a bit of work still.
Yeah.
Right, okay, that makes sense. But it always makes sense to work on scrappy wheels anyway, so that's fine. But yeah, I mean, the paint is really good. I mean, there's a few tiny little blemishes, perhaps a little bit of polish, but I think it's all kind of there. And the interior looks in really good nick as well, doesn't it? That's lovely. So have you had to do much work on her?
Not on rust or anything, but a little
just lots of little things everywhere here and there. Yeah, okay, no, fair enough. Now, I noticed you've got the windows out at the moment. Why is that?
It's the headlining.
Oh, the headlining, of course. You know, that is a tricky job.
Yeah.
It's got to be said. And I think it's one of those things where you could really do, probably with 2 people, maybe easier. So while I'm here, I'm happy to give you a hand.
Oh, that would be great.
Fantastic. And have you got all the parts we need?
Yeah.
And is that it over there on the other side of the workshop?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, well, let's crack on. There you go, sir. Some gloves on before we start work. Thank you. Fantastic.
Before we get started on the headlining, we remove the seats to ease access. The roof of the Golf makes a useful space to lay out all the bits and pieces that we're going to be using, so we protect it with an old blanket.
Right, well, these are all the pieces we need for our headlining. So we've got all the bits that go on, all the B pillars, A pillars, C pillars, and hopefully we can work out where they're all going to sit. But also we have a whole load of new metal stays as well. They obviously sit inside the roof. Now, the problem we've got is that normally when you change a headline, you have the original headlining, or at least bits of it, to use as some kind of pattern. But more crucially than that, you'll also have the stays in the right position at the right length. Now these are all the same length. I suspect we're going to have to cut them down to get them all to sit correctly, but we have no pattern and no idea where they're supposed to go. So the first thing we're going to do is fit all of these, and then the idea is then we can hopefully make sure that we can shorten them so they sit beautifully in the roof, and then we can start actually attaching them to the roof itself. Right, so these little chaps here, as we know, go into there. Now what's interesting, you see, they are way too long. I mean, that's a good few centimetres. Now looking at the roof, you can see we've got this little groove in the sort of the insulation. So actually, I mean, when you look how far along, it's really quite tight, isn't it? So if you actually put that up like that, push it in, so it kind of emulates the same thing, and it gives us a mark of about there. So that actually has to go in really, really tightly. Yeah. So I think we need to do it on each of them, and then we'll just cut that trim there. And it's going to sit on that little shelf of metal there as well. So I'll go to the side. I think we'll be happy with that. Let's hope your cutters are up to the job. Maybe line it up in that groove. So the next stage, once this is finished, is to thread each of these, now we know which position they're going to be in, through our headlining, and then put the headlining back into position. And what we've done, I've left the clips all on one side of the car, and on the other side, we'll actually put the clips in as we go. Let's just see if this one fits. Put it on the padding. Cool. Brilliant. Right, so the next thing we need to do is actually establish where the centre line is on the front and the rear of our roof, then do the same thing on the car so we can keep everything aligned. And probably the quickest way is actually just to fold it onto itself, like so. Just put these ends together so they're pretty close to being symmetrical. At this stage, I don't know how much we're going to have to pull through. Just put a little mark on there.
We then repeat the process on the other end of the headlining before we mark the same centerline on the car itself.
Right, so it's the same procedure around the back of the car as well. Of course, the seal tailgate is in the way, so get rid of that. Now the good news is I've actually got some reference points here with the hinges, so it's slightly easier to measure up. Right, so the next thing we can now do and unfurl our roof again, and now we're going to slip in our little rods. So we need to keep them in order. So let's just get the last one first. Right, in fact, I'll take it to you. Yeah. Start at this end perhaps. So let's just pop that into there like so. And we're just going to try and feed that. Yeah. So having now got all our rods in position, the next thing to do is actually get the tension right. So the first thing we're going to do is actually pull this rod at the front as far forward as it'll go in its little slot. Then we can then clamp the headlining to the windscreen frame, or at least to that front edge of the metal, and then what we'll do is we'll start kind of getting the tension all the way to the back. We can then clamp the rear of our headlining to the metalwork of the car, but of course then we need to make sure that our centre lines all match up front and rear. So we're getting there. So just going to offer this up, and you can see we're just a little bit over this side, so we need to track the whole headlining in that direction. So if you give it a bit of a tug over there, hopefully it'll go. So now what we need to do is get a little bit more tension along the front in sort of the outward direction, but at the same time also up a little bit as well. So we're tensioning it along the line of the headlining, but also on the way towards the outside of the car. All the way along here, just trying to maintain tension as I go. Of course, eventually this is going to be glued in position, but until we get it exactly right, these clips are very, very handy. Right, so it's looking better as a start. So now what we need to do is go through every single little spar there and actually kind of tension them, make sure that they're still centralised a little bit, and also we'll just work our way all the way to the back and then make sure that the back is centred and then taut, and hopefully it'll take a long time, but it's going to get better and better and better. And before we try and tension things from front to back, I'm just going to make sure our position on the rear here, actually that's looking pretty good. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to clamp one clamp in the middle, just so we have a little frame of reference. And then we'll tighten from the front all the way to the back. Right, well actually, it's not looking too bad. There's something a little bit squiffy at the back there, so have a look at that. But also, I think we're slightly, so this needs to go slightly further forward on that side, but this side here needs to go slightly further back. So we just need to do a bit more adjustment and things. But I think it's actually not going too badly considering we've only just started this. I think the other thing is, it's nice and warm in here in the workshop, but it's possibly not warm enough. We are in the middle of a Norwegian winter, which is quite chilly. So if there's any way you can crank up the heat in the workshop,
Yeah, no problem.
that'd be cool. Okay, so while we're waiting for that to warm up, and we'll do some more fettling later on, should we crack on with the engine for a bit? Brilliant. Right, Stian, now the reason your project stalled is really about the engine, wasn't it?
Yes.
So this is the 8-valve engine that came stock with the car. You've taken that out. You want to fit the 16-valve engine.
Yeah.
Now the thing is, I can totally understand why that, because out of the factory, this is 110 horsepower, 137 newton meters of torque, whereas this is 137 horsepower and 168 newton meters of torque. So it's obviously a lot more sporty. Now, the downside of all of this, unfortunately, is of course the Norwegian authorities, as I understand it, don't like you to soup up your engine without doing some checks. Now, what's great news is there's a German tuning company called Oettinger, and actually what they did is they made about 2,500 Mk1 Golfs fitted with 16-valve engines, but to cope with the extra performance, they actually uprated the rear brakes from drums to discs. Now, handily, Volkswagen France officially approved that conversion, and because of that, the Norwegian authorities are going to let you fit your 16-valve engine into your Mk1 Golf as long as you fit the uprated rear discs as well.
That's great news.
It's very, very cool. Should we pop this thing in?
Oh yeah.
I think so. It's about time.
Når Edd fortalte meg at han hadde en løsning på å få den Golfen godkjent med 16-ventil-motoren, så ble jeg ikke lei meg da.
Yep. Okay.
This fold-away engine hoist is very useful, but using luggage straps to support the engine is not so great. It's well worth investing in a load-leveling engine sling. It'll actually allow you to tilt the engine to exactly where you want and gives you much more control.
Brake pipe in the way there. How are we doing? Is that going to go down there and it has to come towards us? Well, let's go down just a little tiny bit.
Really?
Yep. 1 second, we're stuck on something.
Stuck here.
Yeah, we may be...
Move it.
Well, either we unbolt the socket for that. I don't know, maybe that's easier. I'm not sure. Can we get to that relatively easily?
Just 2 bolts here.
Perhaps we'll lift it up a little tiny bit. Put that onto there first, then drop it back down and then connect it again.
Sure.
So that's 17, I guess. That's just cheating. I might have to steal that. Okay, let's go down again. Whoa! Just a little bit less fast as that. Oh. So this engine mount is about a sort of, I don't know, 250 mil from where the engine mount's got to go in the lower one. This lower mount has got to go all the way up to here. It's kind of handy if we could tilt the engines a little bit. So we're just going to use a trolley jack to try and actually get that a little bit higher. I'm just now going to just put a ratchet strap on here. We're going to try and rotate the engine in our favour because at the moment it's looking a bit tricky. Nice.
Yep.
Oh, look at that. That's lovely. Straight in. Well done. That's fantastic. So now we should be able to jack that back up again.
Yep.
Stop. F1. This is pretty exciting stuff. So our 16-valve engine, nearly in the engine bay. We're just going to lower it down, take off the stress. It's going to then put it onto the engine mounts, and then it should be safe to work on later. You ready? Oh, and relax. Look at that. Wonderful. She's in. Well, we're in great shape. We've now got your 16-valve engine in your Mark 1 Golf. All you've got to do is connect up all the wiring, the plumbing, the brakes, all the other bits and pieces. It's actually quite a bit of work, so I'm not going to leave you on your own. I've arranged for your mates to come down. You've got Knut and Thoraxor to give you a hand. And while you boys get busy, I'm going to sort out your nasty wheels. So crack on.
And after finishing his supper, a third friend, Robin, also drops in to give the boys a hand. And together, Stan and his mates get stuck in, finishing off the installation of the engine and doing the final adjustments to the headlining. While the boys crack on with Stan's Golf, no doubt working through the night, I get busy smartening up his tired-looking wheels. They desperately need a fresh coat of paint. Powder coating is a dry painting process that uses powdered plastic instead of paint particles suspended in a wet solvent. The first step of the process is to remove the old flaky paint and metal corrosion by sandblasting the wheels down to the bare metal. Then, any residue is cleaned off before the powdered paint is applied using a static charge. This makes the paint particles spread out evenly over the surface of the wheel, even round corners to the back. The static also causes the particles to stick to the metal in readiness for the curing process. In a special furnace, the final step is to heat up the wheels to between 175 and 190 degrees Celsius. This melts the paint into a fluid state, allowing it to flow together evenly over the surface of the wheel and also bonding it to the metal surface. The wheels are then left to bake for 10 to 15 minutes and then allowed to cool. Looking good.
So we've now got the wheels back from the powder coaters, which is great. They've even put tyres on them, which is wonderful. Here they are. Look at that. That is really lovely. I think Stin's going to be really, really chuffed with those. And the interesting thing is, of course, he could at any time actually finish them off with a bit of diamond cutting, but actually the outlaw look is kind of cool too and really fits with what he's doing. So let's see what he thinks. Hi, Stin. How's it going?
Oh, yeah.
You being a busy boy?
Oh, yes.
Well, as have I. Check it out. Look at that. It's pretty special, isn't it? So I think, obviously, we've gone for the black completely for now. Obviously, you can do the diamond cutting whenever you feel. But I think that look is going to really suit the car quite nicely, isn't it? So
I think so, too.
So let's have a look and see how you got on. So it looks like you've been quite busy.
Oh, very.
So lots and lots of plumbing and wiring and everything else. I mean, looking good. I can't help noticing one tiny little detail. Now, obviously, you know this is a GTI, and the I standing for injection, and yet there are two whacking great carburetors on here. You've actually removed the I from the GTI.
Yeah.
Why have you gone for the carbs?
Just because of the sound. It's more like bop, bop, and I like that. So.
Fair enough, that's a good answer. No, I mean, they look great. They are going to sound absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Who cares about fuel economy and retuning? Fine, fair enough. No, that's cool. And also, I noticed the clips are gone. So look at that, you've actually finished the headlining as well. Yeah. That is wonderful. I mean, how long did that job take?
3 hours.
Uh-huh. Yeah. No, it's quite a tough one, but I think also probably it was a bit more pliable once the workshop was warmer, which is good. So fantastic. Well done with that. So really, just to finish that job off, all we need to do is to fit a windscreen. Just give it a go. Right, now first thing, have you got any paracord or some thick wire or something perhaps?
Yeah.
The idea is to use a paracord or a little bit of wire or cable and actually get it in between the gap and the rubber here that's going to go over the lip, the metal lip on the car itself. And the idea is we can work it all the way around and making sure we get a really good seal. So we can start pretty much anywhere, and what you're doing is just putting the wire or the cable all the way through. Paracord, the sort of stuff that actually attaches parachutes to people, is slightly better than wire, but this will work. It's quite thick. What you risk with normal electrical cable or electrical wire is that you could tear the rubber on those really tight corners. You don't really want to do that. Another thing you can do is you can always put an old biro, actually thread wire through the biro and use that to actually part the rubber as you place it in, but this is just as quick, really. Right, so now we've got our cable all the way around, we can now place the screen onto the actual car itself. What we want to try and do is hook this bit of rubber over the bottom edge of the screen first, because that's the most important bit, because then the weight of the screen helps push it in place, and then we can start pulling the cord round and hopefully get our rubber where we need it. So what we're going to do is just put it on the edge there, ease it over.
With a bit of fiddling, between us we get the channel in the rubber over either side of the metal lip of the bottom of the screen frame. Then we can start pulling out the cord.
Just ease it gently, and this is where you can tear the rubber. If you pull too tightly, you kind of cut it against the metal. It's just a case of just teasing it out.
Just a bit of gentle persuasion.
There's no need to rush it, just take your time, because again, we don't want to rip the rubber, but also we don't want to pull all the headlining out either. And it's just a case of judging, making sure that the glass is sort of being pulled into the car. Because if it isn't, start again. So I'm just going to roll the rubber so the whole thing levers the screen into place. Obviously, I'm not using a hammer, just using the palm of my hand, or at least the palm of my hand. So what's happened here, got all excited, and I've actually pulled it out, so you can see that the rubber isn't quite in position. So just a bit more working, and hopefully we should get it in. The last bit.
I'm using the back of a hook rather than a screwdriver so I can safely get hold of the rubber lip again and then gently stretch it into place.
One last push, and the screen is now in, the headlining is done, but there is one crucial job we still have to do, and that is convert the drum brakes to discs. Right, well now we've got that wonderful 16-valve engine in your Mk1 Golf. To get you street legal, to get the authorities happy, what we need to do is change the drum brakes on the rear here to disc brakes. Now I've actually taken the liberty of getting those parts, they're in the van, but I noticed unfortunately you've already gone to the trouble of renewing your drum brakes. Well, that's a shame. Hopefully you can get some money back, maybe selling them or sell them to a mate or whatever, but in the meantime, I'll go get the bits. You can crack on with the other side. Yeah. Now, on the way here, I did actually go to the trouble of getting our new brakes that we need for the back of the Golf. Now, these ones are actually the same spec as off the Mark II Scirocco, which is kind of interesting, which obviously means that they are readily available.
First, I need to remove Stian's brand new drums. Off with the dust cover. Then remove the split pin, the locking cap, and finally the hub nut. With the washer removed, I finally get to pull off the bearing with the drum.
Okay, that's a bit of a shame. So obviously got our dust seal here, that stayed as part of the drum, but the actual bearing, the back of the bearing has stayed on the shaft, so I need to remove that before I can get the back plate off. Oh, I didn't really have to take that bearing off. It's a bit tidier, and obviously means it's easier for Stian to use this stub axle again. So now, rather than take all the brakes off here, all I need to do is disconnect the handbrake and undo these 4 bolts. Then I should be able to take the back plate off, complete with all of the braking, because I also need to disconnect the brake pipe at the back.
With the bolts loose but still attached, I undo the brake pipe from the slave cylinder.
So there is a little stub axle, and then hopefully I can get the lever forward, and you can see I can then get to the handbrake cable. So, well, our drum assembly is now being removed. Now in the kit we now have a special new stub axle, and you can see it's got the bits for the carrier for the caliper. Now that is going to sit like so, but you can see there's quite a lot of corrosion here. I'm just going to clean that back, make sure it's a really good fit, because otherwise your wheel's going to be all in the wrong place. So luckily, because all these new parts are actually dust free, that's handy, but at the end of the day this rust is still going to make a bit of dust, so by wetting it with some brake cleaner that will definitely help minimise any further dust. Well, that's got rid of maybe some of the dust, or dirt at least, but I can still feel a bit of a lip. So what I need to do is just take that metal back just a little bit more. I've just gone over it really lightly, so obviously I don't want to change the shape, but I have now got down to some sort of solid metal, and any corrosion there is now being removed. So now we can place our new stub axle in position. Just put it in finger tight first. Right, so they're all nipped up. I'm just going to torque them up properly. It's very important. Right, so now our stub axle is in position. We can pop on the disc, and I'll clean it once it's finally in position. Nice tight fit, which is great.
It's important to use a new split pin rather than to reuse the old one. Otherwise it could break from fatigue and the hub nut could get loose.
Okay, so that's now in position. I'm just going to check the run out on our disc just to be absolutely sure that it's seated nice and parallelly, and for that I need another tool from the van.
Excessive run out can cause unpleasant vibrations when braking.
Now for this next stage I'm going to need one of these, a dial gauge, just to check the run out of the disc. Right, so I've now positioned our dial gauge so the probe is touching the surface of the disc. Now what I'm worried about is that there might be some kind of wobble or run out, as it's called. And of course that would mean you'd have horrible brakes. And we're looking here, when I spin it around, we've got a movement of about 2, maybe 3 thousandths of a millimetre. So we're really good.
While I've got access, it's a great time to use some brake cleaner to clean up any grease or dirt from the surface of the new discs. Then the caliper carrier can be fitted.
So first of all, we just pop on the caliper carrier, and it's held on with 2 bolts on the back that go into our new stub axle plate. Okay, so then put the brake pads in. Now this is where I need to use a little bit of brake grease just on the edges here, but just on the parts that are going to be sliding in and out of the caliper. So now we just bolt caliper to the carrier. Right, perfect. So next thing we have to think about is our new handbrake cable. Obviously this was operating inside the drum brakes. What we need now is a whole new cable, which is actually going to connect over here. And then, because this obviously normally routes on the outside and is clipped to the suspension arm, this is actually going to thread on the inside of this tube, which is rather natty and keeps it nice and tidy, so it's very handy.
Having undone the handbrake cable from the lever inside the car, I can pull the old cable out from the guide tube in the chassis. Then I thread the new cable through the inside of the suspension trailing arm, and then the inner cable is threaded back through the guide tube that runs inside the car. The outer sleeve of the handbrake cable can then locate into the end of the guide tube.
So now what I have to do is connect this end to the caliper. And now that's popped into there. There we go. That'll tighten up nicely as soon as we start using the handbrake. So our new emergency brake cable is now in position, so the last thing to connect up is our hydraulic brake pipe. Of course, that will ultimately connect this caliper all the way to the brake pedal inside the car via the master cylinder. Okay, so that's now lipped up. So I'm now just connecting the hard pipe, like the conifer, or perhaps sometimes it's steel or copper. I'm just connecting that to the flexi pipe. And that way, of course, when the suspension goes up and down, the flexi pipe takes up all the slack, and then the hard pipe is less compressible. So that's all connected up now. So we're going to have to attach that to the chassis to stop it moving around. But now our brakes are pretty much complete. All we have to do now is bleed the system. So now just need to put some fluid into the reservoir. And it's okay to fill it over the maximum mark, because of course we're going to bleed a whole load of it out through the system to get rid of all of that air. And we need to remove the air because of course it's compressible, which means the brakes don't actually work. They get really horrible and spongy. So with a car as fast as this is going to be, we want it to be able to stop. Up, down, one more, up, down. How's that?
Good.
Nice. Fantastic.
After bleeding the air out of the brake system from all four corners, the only thing that remains is to get those great-looking Outlaw wheels on, fitted with winter tyres, of course.
Okay, so we've now got our brakes in order. Our newly painted wheels are in position. Got our snow tyres on. So all that remains really is to take this beautiful 16-valve GTI for a bit of a spin, probably quite literally in the snow. So, are you ready?
Yeah.
Here we go then, come on. Sounds good, sounds good. Oh, let's go. You absolute hooligan. That is fantastic. What does it feel like to finally
It feels so awesome.
16-valve GTI?
Yeah. Feels awesome.
This is the first time you've ever driven this car. Yeah. Is it what you were hoping for?
Oh, yes.
That's fantastic. And it definitely has that noise. I think your neighbours are going to really love you. Go on, give it some then. Nice! Oh, that's fantastic. Well done. Good skill. Well, that was fantastic. Well done, sir. Awesome. So here's your wife, Tonya, and little Sybil. How old is Sybil?
2 years.
2 years. So you actually started this project when you started that project? Well, pretty much. Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, look, it's been wonderful. I think you guys deserve a go in this wonderful car, but there's one last thing I need to give you before I let you go. Check it out. This is awesome. A GTI child seat. You can see it's the same fabric that's actually in your car already, so it fits beautifully.
Thank you. Awesome.
Shall I give you a hand putting it in the car?
Yeah. That way? Det å ha Edd her hjemme hos seg selv, og sitte og spist middag og drive og skrudd sammen, det har vært skikkelig tøft.
Is everybody safe and secure?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Have a great trip. One last thing I want to do, though. Now, GTI. In brackets, I think. Okay, safe to go. See you later. Well, that was another successful garage revival. If you want me to help you with your unfinished project, then do send me your distress video, and preferably from somewhere a little bit warmer.